Welcome back to a brand new episode of the MMA Beat. It is Thursday, May 10th, 2018. Hello again, everyone. I'm Ariel Helwani back inside our New York City studio. Thank you very much for joining us. We've got a four-man panel today. That is exciting, as always. That, of course, is Luke Thomas of SiriusXM and MMAFighting.com. That is Danny Segura of MMAFighting.com. And, of course, the anchor is in the house, the man in the hat, Chuck Mindenhall of The Ringer and MMAFighting.com. All right, guys, typically news breaks after we say goodbye on a Thursday. This particular day is different. Eddie Alvarez tweeting moments ago that he has officially agreed to fight Dustin Poirier July 28th in Calgary. We spoke about this last week a little bit, the options for Alvarez, and of course how it pertains to Nate Diaz as well. We will get to Nate Diaz, but just wanted to get your immediate thoughts. So it is finally happening, the rematch of a fight that occurred almost exactly a year ago in Dallas, Texas, UFC 211, Poirier Alvarez 2. Do you like this fight?
Love it, love it, love it. And it helps provide some clarity, too. Kevin Lee's situation still a little bit uncertain, but Tony Ferguson on the shelf. All assumptions are that Khabib is going to fight Conor McGregor. So now we've got another piece of the puzzle all kind of coming together. It was the rematch, as you mentioned. It was a good first fight, but it was one that was left uncertain in terms of what it all meant in the end. And now they're going to get back together, which, by the way, also means that Eddie Alvarez has another contract, which means he will stay in the Ultimate Fighting Championship.
Don't assume. Don't assume.
Don't assume.
Don't assume. I asked about it and wasn't given clarity, but I wouldn't assume.
Okay, well, nevertheless, I'm assuming if he wins this contest, yes, he would have significant
himself up very nicely
for another contract with additional leverage. So I don't have a whole lot to say about it other than it's a great fight. It should sit at the top of that card. Yes. It has a great co-main. July is going to be a very busy month for the Ultimate Fighting Championship. I'm very excited.
Dana White's ultimate birthday card.
Yeah.
Awesome.
It's a pretty good card.
Yeah, it is good card.
Yeah, this was the fight to make. I mean, we talked about it here, how, like, they had unfinished business. And on top of that, I mean, on the rankings, I believe they're 4 and 5. They're right there. And if it's not Conor McGregor, we talked about Dustin Poirier maybe stepping in there as a contender. Well, now we got a possible title eliminator about, you know, we don't know what's going to happen with Conor McGregor. So it's nice to have this fight and know, okay, at least, you know, the winner of this guy will go on and fight for the title.
It's fun, and I'm glad that they can bring a little more closure to it, because honestly, when that fight happened, I think immediately, like the next day, I'm like, I hope that they just book that back. It took a while to get done, but, you know, it's exciting when something like that can continue, and hopefully it goes through. If he doesn't have a new contract going in, this is a risky thing. I always love these guys, though, who gamble on themselves a little bit, because it just adds this extra piece of backstory to it, this exhilaration to the back of it. So if that's the case, good for Eddie Alvarez. I know that we talked about his leverage where he was at, and I think that he believed he probably had more leverage going into the last fight than the UFC did. So I think this is kind of the perfect fight for him, regardless if he gets the deal done or not.
It's also rare when there's like a legit grudge match beneath the title picture. You know, you get a lot of fights that make sense, that we're excited about, but there's no real backstory. There's backstory here to this one. You know, like how many Fox main events, Josh Emmett, Jeremy Stevens, all these fights are kind of just cobbled together. This one, it's been frustrating that it hasn't been made for a while, but the fact that we waited now makes me even more excited for it in a weird way.
The B-roll. I mean, you just have to throw the B-roll up and like show some of the first fight. And
and even the back and forth that they had.
And the interviews that they've done. Absolutely, for sure. And by the way, just to speak to that card a little bit, main event, potential, as you indicated, lightweight title eliminator. Co-main event, Jeremy Stevens, Jose Aldo, also a featherweight potential title eliminator. I mean, with Jose, it's a little bit different, but certainly Jeremy Stevens is right at the cusp. So big stakes, co-main and main for a UFC on Fox card.
Yeah, and Ioane and Jacek also on the card against
Tisha fight.
The Calgary fans have been waiting
penultimate card. It's like everybody's like,
yeah, but so let me ask you, the Calgary fans have been waiting for a makeup card, if you will. Does this suffice, in your opinion?
I mean, it's a good card. It does have a lot of good names on it. And like you mentioned, there are some title ramifications, but anytime there's something weird, and the association with Calgary is that other card fell apart so fully and played out the way it did, that you hope that they get the iteration that they're building right now. That's really my only hope. Because right now, if it stands, I would have no problem with that card. It's not the biggest card, but I think it's got enough big names and like you said, some backstories and stuff to make it a really fun card.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a pay-per-view. You know, this is a Fox card. I think for a Fox card is amazing. I mean, I think Jose Aldo versus Jeremy Stevens alone could have main evented that card easily. And then you could have had recently, you know, title contender and former champion and Jacek face Tisha Torres in the co-main event with no problem. So now adding this fight, I think this is a pretty solid card.
I think we have to reevaluate value proposition here just a little bit. It is not a pay-per-view, but I got to be honest, what would you rather go to? Because you go to UFC on Fox card, maybe you're not getting a title fight, maybe you're not getting some of the bigger super-duper stars, but geez, you're getting some pretty big names on that card, number one. Number two, my understanding is the UFC on Fox cards relative to pay-per-view, the price point is relaxed.
Yeah.
So if you live in Calgary, you're not going to pay as much. You're probably going to get some killer fights, and it's going to be a nice packed arena. I'll take that over an expensive pay-per-view where it's a little bit dubious about what you might be getting there.
The timing of this fight is also interesting. If, in fact, they are able to get Nate Diaz against anyone on August 4th, you wonder if they put these guys on July 28th, which is exactly a week before the August 4th date, maybe as a backup in case something happens. You know, they're all kind of in the same discussion, those three. And of course, we don't know who Nate is going to fight. We don't know if he's going to end up on that card in the end. But I wonder if they really wanted those two to be on that card, not to take something away from Calgary. I don't want to, you know, scare the Calgary fans, but I wonder if timing came in. Like, the reason they really wanted this fight on that July 28th card is because it's so close to that August 4th. If, in fact, they do get Nate Diaz on that August 4th card, in case something happens, they always like to have a backup plan. So I wonder if that came into play as well. It does seem that the much-anticipated Valentina Shevchenko versus Nico Montano fight maybe is not going to end up on July 28th after all. So that is unfortunate for the fans who are looking forward to that in Cowtown. You know that's the nickname for Calgary, right?
Yeah.
Cowtown?
Yeah.
Did you guys know that? You didn't know that?
It's a saddle dome, right? So it's like it's all cattle. And
That's right.
It's the Scotia Bank Saddle Dome.
Yes, it is. Well, you know, the Stampede is a big thing
Right,
there every
right.
summer. Actually, that's around the Stampede, if memory serves me correct. Anyway, so let's go from that fight to the Nate Diaz situation, because there's more news since last week's show. So we talked last week. You were somewhere stuck between, I think, Delaware.
Yeah, I got
and,
stuck in Delaware.
Yeah.
Great.
Oh, man.
Shouts to Amtrak for a 6 a.m. train derailment.
They have been in talks. The talks are going well. They're still going well. They're still in a good place. But GSP's name has surfaced. Even Dana White speaking about wanting to make that fight. What do you guys think about this? Do you guys like this idea? We talked about it a little bit not that long ago. I believe it was I who brought it up first, as an idea, not as something that I knew was happening. So maybe they listen to this show more than we think. Nevertheless, Chuck, what do you think of the idea?
If you just look at it in a very black and white sense, you say neither guy, both guys, it feels like we're on borrowed time, right? It just feels like we're playing with house money. You know, I don't know if either one of them really cares about being a part of pecking orders or anything like that. So it's one of those situations, very black and white sense. You think, since they don't belong to any structure, and there's not really like you're not trying to play a future off of this. The bottom line is, I'm like, why not? They can do that. Go ahead and do that. Like if it's to tap into the casual market and just bring eyeballs to it, whatever they want to do. My big contention with it, when you kind of fill in with some color, is that it just doesn't seem like a competitive fight. But that's just projecting based on what you know of the two guys and their histories. But as far as the matchmaking itself and bringing two guys together who don't really have, I don't know what it does for GSP's legacy, all this stuff about that. But the bottom line is, if it's all about just making some money and having two big names go at it, why not?
I think this is a great fight. I actually like it a lot.
Well, look,
I know Luke has different opinions, but these guys, GSP's out of the title picture at middleweight. Certainly out at welterweight. He hasn't been in several years. Nate Diaz is the same thing. I know the UFC or fans and people have wanted to try to include him into the lightweight title picture when Conor McGregor was the champion. But now that Conor McGregor's not the champion, that's not really there for him. This fight, one of my biggest issues with booking these kind of fights, where does it disrupt the order? Are you putting a number one contender, in a waiting line? Or are you making them fight another unnecessary fight just to make the super fight? Well, this super fight has nothing to do with that. Both these guys are currently not contenders, and they're fighting each other. There's no belt in the line. And what I really like about it, they're kind of pulling off a Bellator card in the sense that from what Dana White originally said, is that they wanted that fight to be the co-main event, and then they want to put TJ Dillashaw, right, versus Cody Garbrandt in the main event. And I thought that's great, because GSP versus Nate Diaz, whether it's a competitive fight or not, it's going to bring a lot of eyeballs. And you have TJ Dillashaw and Cody Garbrandt, two young guys that are currently doing quite well. And, although they're popular with the casual fan base and the hardcore fan base, they could use maybe a little bit more mainstream attention. So I'm happy with that matchup. And, I know it's maybe, from what we know, not the most competitive fight out there, but, fights fights are not built off just competitiveness. Oh, is this fight competitive? Boom, check. No, it's fights that make sense. You know, also there's the financial, situation, and I think it's a good fight.
Luke was popping his knuckles during
Yeah,
that.
Luke is just nodding.
Steam coming out of here.
Yeah,
I wish I
I
had-
feel it. I'm sweating now.
Tell us how you feel.
I wish I had more hands. I would give that fight 4 thumbs down.
Wow.
Couldn't think of a worse idea. Hardly.
Okay, why?
I mean, there's nothing what he said was true. I just want you all to know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's work backwards, right?
Okay.
So it doesn't affect the pecking order. It absolutely affects the pecking order. Not by itself. The second that fight is over, someone's going to say, you know what this does for said winner, Nate Diaz or St-Pierre. It means you could book a St-Pierre Habib. It means you could do a Nate Diaz, Connor, or whatever iteration, whatever iteration they want to come up with, they will use this as an opportunity to launch it. It doesn't immediately by itself do it, but the result will 1,000% be leveraged to fuck with the pecking order. Accept it now because it is a guarantee. So number one, that argument ain't true. Number two, 155 GSP is intriguing, right? I do think that there's something to be said that him moving through that rank and that weight class is kind of fun. But, and I don't think it's true that Nate, people are like, oh, Nate fights just like his brother. That's overstated. He's his own guy. However, all of the talents that Nate presents, you have seen GSP have an answer for them throughout the course of his career. You never know what's going to happen in a fight, but you have a reasonable suspicion here that it's not going to be particularly competitive. And in a 3-round contest, probably not one full of risk for St-Pierre either. I don't need to see it. It doesn't do anything for me. I still believe you could do a much better fight in terms of like what fighting is supposed to be about. Between St-Pierre and Tyron Woodley. I realize that they don't want that, but I'm just saying. On the other side, we talked about just a second ago, Kevin Lee. Kevin Lee has good takedowns, but Kevin Lee still has something to answer for in terms of his ability to ground and pound through guard. By the way, I was at the fight where Nate Diaz did the double middle fingers after submitting Kurt Pellegrino from guard. That is a much more competitive contest. I get it. You cannot be mad at St-Pierre. You cannot be mad at Nate Diaz. They are going to follow opportunities that are in their rational self-interest. And this fight could end up being the most phenomenal fight of 2018, and I have to sit here and eat crow forever and ever. Fine. Well, last thing.
Sure, go ahead.
I'm just saying, this is one of those ones we can get out in front of and say at the end when it's over for a 3-round contest, when it's not all that competitive in the end, what is the point? Just to see 2 stars collide? How meaningless.
I mean, all Anderson Silva's fights at light heavyweight, for example, they were all not competitive matchups. You could say that Anderson Silva would have smoked any of those guys that they fought, yet it was still booked. And just keep in mind that
he was the underdog against Forrest Griffin. It was a surprise that he did that.
Look at GSP. GSP anybody with a big name has a case in this day and age to make a claim for a title shot, right? If GSP were to say, okay, I'm making 100% 155, how many of us, would you be okay with GSP getting a title shot at 155?
No, I mean, right away?
Yeah.
Like first fight back?
Yes.
No, I would not.
No, right. So would you be okay with him fighting number 8, getting a win, and then getting a title shot?
I'd be a lot more okay with it than just getting a title shot, but I'm sure what you're asking me. Like,
Right. Well, I mean, GSP, if he wants to fight at 155, I would much rather him fight somebody else outside of the champion than go right in there and get an immediate title shot.
So then now you are conceding that, in fact, it is set up to interrupt the hierarchy. That's what this fight is.
But those two first have to fight, and then in the meantime, Habib Nurmagomedov can fight the number 1 contender, whoever that is.
Well,
Who do you think that is? It's Conor, obviously.
Conor.
It feels like what the UFC is sitting back and doing is, let's create a 4-man tournament here, right?
Right.
I agree with you 100%. This is to just because you can't lose, right? You can't lose if Nate wins.
100%.
If fights Conor or Habib, you can't lose if GSP wins. I mean, I get it from a financial standpoint. There's a lot of holes that you could poke here. First of all, are they really going to put this co-main event? Get out of here. There's so much value when you're scrolling through DirecTV and it says UFC 227 GSP or St-Pierre versus Diaz.
Yeah, 100%.
That means way more financially than Garbrandt versus Dillashaw.
So then how are they going to do that? You're going to put that to co-main?
Well, that's a problem. B, if you have listened to both men speak about this idea over the last few months, first of all, Nate has said before, that's my brother's fight. So how are they going to get over that hurdle? He hasn't talked about it, but I still feel like there's a sentiment out there within that family, like that's Nick's fight, okay? Again, this is coming from Dana White in the UFC. What Dana White did earlier this week, let's just call it like it is, he talked about a lot of fights that he wants to make, for August 4th in particular, but that aren't done. many of them aren't close to done, and he wants to put pressure on at least one side to get it done. Now, it's a fine strategy. Get people excited, get the fans excited, get the media excited. I would offer that the media needs to be better in these situations. I'm not talking about the UFC Filtered podcast, guys. You know, I'm talking about like media needs to be, and that wasn't a, you know, I didn't misspeak there. I'm talking about the media needs to be better by checking if, in fact, these fights are done. You can't go out and say that Zabit versus Yair is a done deal when it's not a done deal. You know what I mean? So from his perspective, I get it. God forbid we report something early, but he could say something early, and he could say that I want to make this happen. That's fine.
Yeah, that's okay.
That's fine. He could say that. We can't run with it as a done deal. But what's happening is a lot of these fights aren't close to being done. So let's talk about GSP versus Diaz. Not close to being done. Wants it to be done. I get why he wants it to be done. Right. It's a big time fight. But there are hurdles here. Like, so basically why I'm saying this is don't get too worked up, because I think that this is what they want to happen.
I'm going to lose this argument, right? In other words, the star power here will simply wash over my concerns. It's just going to be after the fact.
You understand why they want to make this fight.
100%. I'm not confused about it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, on some level, as a fight fan, if you're a fight fan,
you could abstain. You could say, I'm not in, right? That's what you're saying.
I'm not, like, I get why all the parties want it. I'm just saying, as an observer who has to put down $65 for it.
Well, that's the thing.
Doesn't do much for me.
Chuck, I get why the UFC wants it.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure if Nate and GSP want it.
The problem.
You get what I'm saying?
I say that it will not. When I say that these guys are on the cusp, but they may be on their way out, and that every single one of them is on borrowed time, is because of this very thing. It's not as simple as a four-man tournament. It can never be simple as four-man tournament dealing with those four particular people.
True.
It's like it will never work tidily. It will not work. So it's one of those situations, like if GSP, you could see, like you said, if we think of it in our tidy mind, like, of course, that's the perfect thing, but it will not work out that way. And that's where I'm like, I guess I have the biggest problem with this. If it does become like, if like they're trying to couch it as a four-man tournament, or like this is all going to take place to lead to this.
By the way, that's just
I know,
like
we're speculating, but I mean, like, if it's couched that way, I just feel like you're just setting this whole thing up for failure. And none of these guys have been easy. Diaz has been out for 2 years. GSP just, gave up his middleweight belt. I mean, these guys are impossible to book. They don't even want to do this fight right now. It's like it's impossible to get these guys in the same room on the same level and all the pay they want and the contract and everything. If it messes with the pecking order that we're talking about, that's the UFC's fault. They better have it somewhere in those contracts or something that says, okay, guys, this is the plan. It better be that everybody's on the board with this thing, because otherwise, I don't like that. I don't like that going into these things basically thinking one thing and thinking it's going to be this, and then it turns into something different. There's too much of that. You know what I mean? So I just feel like it's too complicated, honestly, to ever work out the way you're saying.
Do you think that, like, who has a better chance of agreeing to this, GSP or Diaz, or neither? Like, if you're GSP, you've heard him talk about legacy, big fights, stock market, things like that. Do you really foresee him taking a non-title fight in a co-main event where there's no... GSP's been fighting for titles since... When's his last non-title fight? Jay Haran? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Jesus.
Like
Trig.
Okay, one of those, right? Right before the second Matt Hughes fight, right? So, why is he going to fight for a non-title in a co-main event 3-round fight?
Legacy fight too, because he's already beat Nick. It wasn't the most competitive fight. His training partner is Roy McDonald, who plowed right through Nate Diaz. I mean, these things, you just have to think, like, competitively, like having those associations would be a little weird for him as well, even if he is going down to 155. I agree with Luke. I think that's the
other thing.
That's the only thing that seems intriguing.
That is an intriguing aspect.
But I have concerns, no? I mean, to go from 185 to 155 is unprecedented. I know he's not a real 185er, but do you really think, okay, you remember what GSP looked like at 170. Do you really think he'd be good at 155? Like, he'd be healthy at 155? It wasn't like he was a big 170-pounder. He wasn't necessarily like, I don't know. Was he considered a big 170 pounder? I just don't know if he can make 155, especially at his age.
I think he was considered a big, maybe not a huge 170 pounder, but by no means he was a small guy. But look, GSP's a professional. He's been, has he ever missed weight? I don't think so.
No, I'm not talking about fears of business. I just don't know if he's healthy at 155.
I think
his interest.
I think, and he's always said it. He said it for years. It'd be healthier for me to drop down to 155 than to go up to 185. And he's been saying it for years. I really do think if, GSP's a professional, knows his body well. If he knows he can make 155 and be in fighting shape, I think that's the case here.
Again, it's easy to speculate about this now because it's been put out there. And again, I actually like the fact that Dana's being transparent about this. Like, hey, this is what we want to happen. Let's gain some interest, and it'll put some pressure. But let's also be transparent about it. We have not heard from either party, and we know that, as you mentioned, both parties are sometimes difficult to deal with. They're not just going to be like, yeah, sure, I love that idea. You want to do a little tournament. So I think that we need to just temper our reaction to this. And this is actually a theme for a topic coming up later in the show. But you know what I mean? It's one thing to have Dana White say it, but there's no little nice graphic that's out there. I just feel like there's a big overreaction to this. People need to realize that what the UFC...
in terms of its impending inevitability or something?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people just took it as gospel, like it's happening. How could this happen?
It's funny that in 2018 we still do this at all. I mean, anything like that, I don't know.
Do you see this being competitive at all, if it does happen?
You have a guy who, I was thinking about this. I'm like, you have a guy who has, he's disappeared, or he's just been really worked over by guys, typical welterweights. Nate Diaz, when he's fought at welterweight, did not look good. He hasn't fought in 2 years. He's 3-4 in his last 7 fights, going against a guy who hasn't lost, who has 13 wins in a row, has defended 9 times, has won a second belt in that time. There's nothing that should make you think this fight would be competitive.
Yeah.
That's what's kind of mind-blowing about it, because if you get past the 2 big names, it then gets into the nuances of is this even going to be competitive? And I honestly don't see a scenario that it is.
Let me just reiterate what I said a few months ago about this fight. From a storyline perspective, you can't beat this. You really can't. This is a brilliant idea, right? It is a brilliant idea. Nate Diaz fighting on behalf of his brother to avenge the loss. He was screwed in Quebec.
All manufactured, dude.
No, he was screwed in Quebec by the commission.
100%.
And the IV. Remember, he said that he thought that he was drugged.
I know, but Nate has not been carrying that cross for him.
But what if he does now? And could you imagine Nick cornering him? By the way, I love the idea. It's fun. It's fun as hell.
No,
I just don't know.
No, you think it'd be competitive though?
That's
Here's the thing.
Nate Diaz versus Eddie Alvarez is a much more competitive fight, right?
Nate Diaz versus Kevin Lee to me is very intriguing.
But as I said last week, if you know anything about Nate Diaz, he is not putting Kevin Lee over.
I understand, but we're simply talking about
giving him that lottery ticket.
I get it. They like being the B side. I get it. I'm simply saying, if you're asking me what's competitive, that's competitive. Let me just say this about this, because everyone's like, I don't know how competitive it would be with Nate. Well, I would probably pick GSP to win, right? But you got to be very careful in MMA. The way I think to look at it is, do you have a reasonable suspicion that this would not be competitive for very identifiable components of how they would match up? And you do in that case. You never know. I think we should just, to me, I've done predictions enough to know where it's been this guy's going to waste the other guy. And then you think it just doesn't happen at all the way you think. So I'm going to hedge it a little bit. But if I had to bet money, who would I bet money on? I mean, it's pretty clear you got to put it on St-Pierre.
What about the sight of Nick in his brother's corner telling him, do this for me, wearing jeans, screw the Reebok.
I'm not even interested in a GSP Nick Diaz rematch. The first fight was terrible.
I think the only new wrinkle here...
Drugged by the IV.
There are some other extenuating circumstances.
I think I agree in the sense that this bout will likely not be competitive, but there is a new wrinkle, the fact that it's at 155. Sure. You don't know how GSP will look. So that does make the fight a bit more interesting. And there's history there, like you said, so I think it'd be a fun build-up.
It's just, if you're thinking about, imagine your most important criteria is, we had a whiteboard up there, we said, okay, let's book competitive fights. GSP versus Nate Diaz at 155, it would be on the board, but it'd be probably towards the bottom of the list, given the available other matchups.
And if there is this little, fictitious 4-man tournament, I think you have a better chance of getting GSP to fight Conor or Khabib than Nate. I feel like Khabib is a champ, 26-0, right? I mean, there's something to be said for beating him, right? Yep. Conor is Conor, of course.
So wait a second, let's take a step back. Who do you think Nate Diaz wants to fight?
That's a great...
who fits the profile? Because I'm struggling at this point to even come up with a name.
I think that I think that Eddie Alvarez was of interest. I think that the UFC bringing this to the forefront, Dana White clearly wants to make this happen. I think may have piqued his interest, but I just think that there's hurdles there. Maybe they get over it with Nick, and maybe he feels like it's a competitive fight. I mean, Nate's not going to walk into a fight that he doesn't think that he is, favored or has a chance. So I don't know. It's a tough one, especially now that Poirier and Eddie, because I kind of put it as Eddie Poirier as the top 2 when we were talking last week about top 5 lightweights being, bandied about. I don't know, maybe Tyron Woodley makes a cameo in all of this, but that hasn't been discussed. It's a difficult one. Yeah.
There's two names.
Okay.
Connor and then somebody else, right?
Is it possible that Connor reemerges?
You mean for like the
the
summer?
most complicated
Nate
picture
Diaz.
we've ever had.
What if they just say, all right, you don't want to make this happen, we'll do, this wouldn't shock me, GSP versus Khabib at MSG, and let's do Connor.
I don't think we've ever had a division where you were dealing in so many red tape issues, but also people's druthers.
Yeah.
Because it's like one guy doesn't want it, he's not going to do it, and this guy doesn't want him, he's not going to do it. It's the most bizarre setup. There's no it's fun that Poirier and Alvarez is booked for the sheer fact of just being like, okay, we got some clarity there at least.
Right.
Because the rest of it, I'm like, it's impossible to figure out, man. You can't assign somebody like the UFC used to obviously say this is who you're going to fight, and this is what happened, And these days it's just you got three outliers in one division if GSP's down there and basically expressing their druthers and you know what I mean and playing hard.
Let's include him there for a second. It has been a very long time, if ever, that the UFC has had 4 megastars in the same division. And 4 megastars in this era where it's like, no, I'm going to tell you what I want. Not like, let me know when I'm fighting next, the next man up. And this is like, I think it's a gift and a curse for the UFC. I think it's, if you can make the fights happen, it's tremendous, right? Yeah. This summer, the back end of 2018 could be phenomenal. But I think it's a curse also because it's probably a big headache getting everyone to agree. And let's not forget also, Connor has his hearing coming up in June. Yeah. I mean, I think most people suspect that nothing major is going to happen to him, but that could throw a wrench into all of this as well.
Yeah,
and
it's true.
No, but what if New York says, you know what, we don't want him fighting here? The court system could be so
they go to Vegas.
Sure. All right, I'm just saying. I think Connor versus Khabib in New York would have been huge. Yeah. Could be huge.
Oh, I agree with that, certainly. Yeah. But I mean, Connor versus Khabib on the moon, we'll get some.
Sure. What about Boise, Idaho? Do you think it sells out there?
Yeah, that'd be a perfect card for that fight.
What a fascinating story. I will say, though, I think 224, and we'll weigh in on that, towards the end of the show coming up this weekend. Once I feel like, and 224 is a really good card. I think it's like a hardcore fans card. I don't think it's going to sell very much, but like once we get to 225 and then 226, and if 227 turns out the way they want it to turn out, and again, Rockhold, Gustafsson isn't done, Zabit versus Yair isn't done, Nate versus GSP isn't done, but let's say they are able to get those fights done. What a stretch we have coming up here, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully everything remains intact. Best fight of all these that is being discussed? One that makes you most tingly?
Wait, confirmed or not confirmed?
Let's lump them all together.
That's a tough one.
I mean, the Cormier Miocic one is like.
Is that up there?
I would put that still near the top. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go. I'd go Ortega and
really?
Holloway.
Wow, above all of them.
Again, what I'm asking about is competitiveness and elite MMA. That's the best fight in the summer.
That's such an old school matchup, like moments. I love that sort of thing. But new school, but I mean, like in terms of the momentums where guys are just going right at each other, I love that type of matchup.
What about Yair for a second here before we transit? Like,
hashtag fake news.
Yes,
I saw that tweet.
Very nice. It's nice of him to reference, President Trump. But like, no, honestly, why in the world would he accept this fight? I can't wrap my head around it. This fight makes 0 sense for Yair Rodriguez. Has not fought in a year, got thoroughly beaten up by Frankie Edgar. You need to get back on track. I can't understand why he would accept it. I can't understand why the UFC wants it, unless they just want to kill the guy off. But like, why would you put this other guy who's doing so well, who's got such a fun style, who's, for the most part a finisher, against this young stud? Like, leave Yair alone for a second, right?
I agree 100%. I mean, but I know you're saying, I'm surprised the UFC's trying to make this fight, but this is the same promotion that booked Yair versus Frankie Edgar to begin with, and I think that's even a worse matchup. Yeah, of course. I mean, look, if they would have booked him against another veteran, with a big name that was more of a manageable task, and then Yair would have gone out the winner, do you think he would have set out for a year?
No.
No, he would have been active, he would have been on the mic, he would have been fighting. But he had that loss to Frankie Edgar. Obviously, he had a documentary come out as well, and he was busy with other things. But he went off, now almost a year without fighting. He needs to get he needs to get his wheels back, and Zabit's currently
don't get them back against Zabit.
Yeah, no, not at all. The guy's currently on a streak. He's training with a good team, and he's got tons of momentum. That's not the type of guy you want to fight on your way back.
I would agree with 99% of that. I do mean that.
Of course, there was that 1%.
Let's hear it.
No, but okay, just hear me out. I generally totally endorse what he's saying. The one thing I would say is at some point, you have to ask yourself, did the UFC lose confidence from that Frankie Edgar performance in Yair
Maybe,
to go and book that fight? And then you have to ask yourself, well, if they lost confidence, what would they have to be thinking to come to that conclusion? We're speculating here, but it might be that, like, look, at some point, wherever you're at, you got to beat other good guys.
Right.
You know, Zabit is what, ranked lower than him, I believe?
Yeah. But
Okay, I understand. I'm just saying, at some point, you need to show that you can beat people at this level,
Right.
and maybe they think he can't. I don't know.
if you're a boxing promoter, right? If you're Oscar De La Hoya and you're in the MMA business and you have Yair Rodriguez.
Well, I mean, Jesus.
No, but and you're dealing with a guy
Oscar De La Hoya.
who's good looking, who has a fan base, who has a fun style, but just got
Latino.
thoroughly beaten down. If I'm working together with you, I'm your promoter, you're Yair. Am I booking you against a beat?
Right, but that's not how. I mean,
Well,
But
I understand your point. At this is that at one point, you have to show you belong in the UFC. At one point, you have to show you can beat these top guys. But Yair Rodriguez, I mean, before he fought BJ Penn, look, BJ Penn is a big name, but let's not forget who BJ Penn was when they fought.
Yeah.
And then before
That was
that,
a horrible matchup too.
Yeah, and then before that, he fought Alex Caceres. So this is not a guy that's been around and it's like, okay, it's time for you to pick up your weight. No, this is still a guy that's building up.
Oh, man.
And then you throw him against Frankie Edgar, and then he has to go over
First thing you
that.
should do is to build the aberration, right? Like you say, like, wait a minute, that fight was the off one. That's the anomaly. Those 6 fights that he won beforehand against Hooker and all these guys, these guys who are doing well now, that's the real guy, right? Like you're trying to, you make that the aberration. So how do you do that? You put him against a guy he should beat. So I don't like the fight on that level. And the other thing is after you get, we've seen this happen before psychologically. A guy gets beaten down like that. They do not look the same when they go back in there. You'd rather him find his bearings and the whole situation, confidence-wise and everything, against somebody who's not going to, that's not riding on cloud nine right now, who wants to destroy him. I think that guy, Zabit, is like one of these guys who, in another year or two, we could be talking about him being among the best, in the division. So I don't like it on those levels. I'd rather see him try to get his confidence back. And I know that they don't consider all of this when you go into a fight, but from my perspective, I'd like to see that.
Last thing about this, I think if the UFC had a more consistent presence in the Mexican market, we wouldn't have to worry about this as much. Now, they are going to Chile in this month, right?
Yeah.
So that's great. I don't think they're giving up or anything on Spanish-speaking Latin America, but remember, Mexico is supposed to be the new Brazil, and it ain't. So that I think they've dialed back a little bit, which is understandable. All I'm pointing out is if they were there a little more regularly, they were doing shows there at some kind of steady clip, then I think you could ask yourself, well, how much could he be a part of those shows? And the matchmaking might be a little more favorable in that regard. But as they've dialed that back, I wonder how much the prioritization of those Mexican fighters matters to them as much as it used to. I'm sure it still matters, but is it front and center like it used to be? Maybe I need to rethink that.
I get why Zabit wants it. This is a great matchup.
I mean, it's perfect for him.
Perfect for him. It makes all the sense in the world. It's just the UFC part, and I can understand why Yair wouldn't want it either. And by the way, if I'm a fan in Los Angeles, I'd be thrilled. Like, we're looking at it from the perspective of, okay, let's try to build the company and build stars.
Yeah, that's a great fight. I mean,
fans get upset sometimes when we take these stances. Like, if I'm a ticket buying customer for August 4th in Staples, of course I would love to see this fight. For 15 minutes, it's going to be fun, right?
Maybe you'd build up to it, but I mean, I don't know. Like, to me, if he was coming off a win, maybe, but I don't really
if you're
like
a knowledgeable enough fan, you can understand that this will be a fun matchup. But if you just take a step back for a second,
time. Like, it's
absolutely,
not, it's not lockstep.
That's why I don't like it.
But I mean, given their styles, I agree with you. They're both they do wild stuff with the striking. So yeah, it'll be a fantastic matchup from that.
See if it happens. Okay, one thing that we do know is happening is on Tuesday, the UFC and ESPN announced that beginning in January of 2019, they will be airing 15 events exclusively on the brand new ESPN Plus app that launched in April. So there's going to be 15 events. There's going to be pre and post fight shows. There's going to be a library that's available via the ESPN Plus app. It's the first time that the North American ESPN, or the American ESPN, I should say, does a deal with UFC. There was a time when ESPN UK used to host, televise UFC events. And
TSN too.
TSN, which is partly owned, and they by the parent company of ESPN, but their majority owner is Bell Media, and that's in Canada, of course. And this is just one part of what is expected to be the UFC's new, rights distribution deal in the United States. according to Sports Business Journal, it's for 150 million. And
Annually.
Yes, annually. And there's still the other shoe, or maybe even shoes to drop. Who knows how many more entities come to play here. So it's just one part. And it's kind of interesting that they announced it, before announcing the entire picture. But we do know that the deal with Fox is coming to an end in December. So there's a lot to unpack here. And let me just say right off the bat, because I do feel from a messaging standpoint, there were a few things that were missed that led to a lot of confusion on Tuesday.
They botched the rollout big time.
Let's just be very clear for our fans, because a lot have asked me about this. This is for the United States only. Yep. ESPN Plus is only available in the United States. A lot of people are worried. What does this mean for me in the UK? What does this mean for me in Canada, Brazil, etc.? Remember, we all have different deals. UFC is available on TSN in Canada. UFC is available on Combate in Brazil. It's available in the UK on BT Sport. So remember, it's all kind of in silos. So I don't think if you're a fan overseas, you have to worry that you're not going to see events. The UFC is going to make them available to you. It just might be on different platforms. For example, here in the United States, there's no FS1 in the UK. Don't worry. But I think that needed to be made a little clearer. There's also the Fight Pass component where people are worried here in the United States, $4.99, $9.99, $65, plus my cable bill, is it all getting to be a lot? So we can unpack all of that. I just wanted to kind of get the information out as much as possible. We all know that Dana White always wanted to be in business with ESPN, right? We know that he's always wanted that seat at their table and maybe that validation. What do you think of the deal? Now that you've had a couple of days to digest it, pros, cons.
Yeah, I mean, everyone
it?
wants to give it a grade right away. It's just impossible to grade.
I
It's
agree.
truly impossible to grade. How are they going to be broadcast? Who's going to call the fights? What are they going to look like? The pre-shows, the post-fight shows, how well will the interface be? I signed up for ESPN Plus the day it came out, long before this came out, and I'll just be honest, as it stands today, it is a garbage platform. However, it looks like it just got out of beta. They haven't done anything hardly with it. Yeah. They have, half a year to figure all that out, and then by the time it gets up, let's see what it looks like then. So you got to pump the brakes on that. Here, look, we could get into the Fight Pass stuff in just a minute. Let me just say one thing about this that I feel like is being lost a little bit in this discussion. And you saw in the messaging, by the way, they should have been a conference call with that release, because it created so many questions that, fans are like, Jesus Christ, now another paywall and all the payment issues. But the one thing I'll say in their defense, if I can, I didn't like the rollout, and of course, another paywall we have to go behind, not great. However, in their messaging, they said, we have this sports league has the greatest share of millennials of anybody, of any sports league, which is, of course, a valuable audience. But really, you have to think about it, right? And I made this point on my live chat a little bit yesterday. By 2023, you'll be 4 years into that deal. What will streaming be like now? Like, now I get all my TV through streaming, for crying out loud. After shows are over, I stream from my house to the world. It will be the almost the only way that people, the generation behind his, Generation Z, get it. So I know why the fans now are looking at this saying, oh, it's another paywall, another obstacle. But I think by the time that deal has matured, it could potentially look like a shrewd move because they catered to the system early. I think ESPN probably appreciates that fact that they committed in a way that no other sport, NFL hasn't committed to it that way. But they were out there first with this. And I think by the time that streaming becomes an even bigger part of our life, that generation that grows up to watch sports, the Generation Z one, this will be right in their wheelhouse, or potentially anyway, could be right in their wheelhouse. And so I think current talk about what the fans think now, it's important, but it's not the only picture.
Yeah, it's hard to tell whether this is good or not, because it hasn't even happened yet. We'll have to wait in 2019 to see how it goes down. But I do agree with you in the sense that I don't have cable, for example, right now, and I'm 25. I can't picture a 19-year-old when he's done with college or he or she's done with college and gets into the workforce wanting to get cable. So ESPN Plus is definitely catering towards the future. We've talked about how the UFC sometimes has felt a little bit outdated and they needed to revamp a little bit, and they sort of try that with UFC Fight Pass. But I think just having that ESPN name attached to it just gives it a lot more value. So I think it's a great move. But again, we'll have to wait and see how everything turns out.
Is ESPN going to be doing the production of? That's what I'm trying to
That has not
understand.
been.
Okay, I felt like people had talked about that before, but I'm interested in this stuff. Obviously because there are some stagnant aspects. You talk about Face the Pain. You talk about there's just certain things that the UFC probably has latched onto too long, and you'd like to just see some change in general. Like what does it all mean? So I feel like it's kind of a nice page turner from where we've been, and it's a little bit of we've been through a little bit of a negative time too. So I feel like, you know, it kind of maybe breathes some new life into this whole thing. And I mean, from ESPN's standpoint, like obviously they're launching this new platform, and I think that if you want people to go behind the paywall, just to do it pretty much automatically, you go to the people who are used to paying for their events. I mean, the bottom line is this is a pay-per-view company first. When they introduced Fight Pass, people didn't really balk at it. It's the Bellators and stuff who can't convince people to pay because they never had that model. The UFC, whatever, we associate with paying. So it's almost one of these type of things psychologically that makes a lot of sense from ESPN's standpoint. But on whole, I'm glad. You know, it's kind of cool to see ESPN finally do it. I remember
You used to work there, right?
Yeah, back when I was doing the stuff, you know, you would hear these whisperings in the building that you know, they were talking. You never were sure to what extent that was real. And then once UFC signed the Fox deal, all that kind of went away. And I wondered if it would ever find its way to ESPN in any form. So it's kind of cool in that sense because I've seen, you know, the sport has grown to the point where ESPN would be interested. Because I can remember when I was first doing stuff there, there might be like a handful of people that knew anything about the sport. It feels like it's certainly gotten some traction now.
My initial reaction was this is a huge win for the UFC because, as I said, they've always wanted to be in business with the Walt Disney Company, right? Also, that $150 number, $150 million number, if accurate, from Sports Business Journal.
Huge payload.
That's a huge win because we had heard for the longest time that the new owners were looking for somewhere in the ballpark of $400 million, right, for their new TV deal. That's what was kind of told to them when they bought the company, that this was waiting for you at the end of this contract. Well, if they're getting $150 million for 15 events, and let's just say there's another 20 or so to play with for Fox, the 150 is more than what they're making this year from Fox.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right.
So they're getting close. Yeah. Let's say they if they could go out to Fox now and say, like, look what we just got for 15 events on an app. What are you guys going to give us for maybe prelims and things like that? In addition to fight night events, maybe they get 200. Yeah. Now you're talking about 350. Now
they already reportedly they already had an offer of 200. So that was already on the table.
I think this is a win for them because of the association. I think it's a win for them from a monetary standpoint, and I do think that it is important for them to sort of evolve with the times. Now, if you have this $4.99 app, okay, it's available on any kind of device, whether it's your computer, your phone, or even if you want to stream it on your TV. Now, again, what was confusing while reading that was, okay, what happens to Fight Pass? Jeremy Botter, who's a reporter for Bleacher Report, put something out that I have been unable to verify myself, but what he put out was, he was hearing was, okay, you pay $4.99 for ESPN Plus, you're getting these 15 events, plus all the ancillary programming. And then for an extra $5 on the app, on ESPN Plus, you can also get Fight Pass. Fight Pass is currently $9.99. Right. So that would equal out to $9.99. Right. But now, for the price that you were paying for Fight Pass over the last 3-4 years, you're getting 15 exclusive events, which you aren't getting now, right, with just Fight Pass. You're getting the rest of Fight Pass, which is Invicta, EBI, Cage Warriors, etc.
The library.
Yeah. And on top of that, if you happen to be, and I know this doesn't always, it's not always the case when it comes to MMA fans, but if you happen to be a sports fan, you're getting a bunch of other crap too. Right. You know, you're getting NHL stuff, ESPN FC, you're getting the new Kobe Bryant show, etc., etc., etc. So I feel like if that is in fact true, which I haven't been able to verify, but if that is true, you're getting a lot more bang for your buck for $9.99 than you were, this time last year, right?
100%. Hopefully that's the case, yeah. However, the release did mention that UFC Fight Pass will be available for purchase through the ESPN.
Yeah, but they didn't mention
the breakdown. The breakdown.
And they also said, and here's the thing that was confusing about the note. I know exactly which part he's talking about, because it was like you can get UFC Fight Pass trademarked and UFC pay-per-view for an additional cost. Was the additional cost, first of all, how much is it? Is it just the pay-per-view? How does the cost break down? That part was just totally unclear.
If it is that extra $5, then I think that, okay, this is a nice win for the fans, because now you're getting essentially half of the TV deal for what you were just getting for, and let's be honest, like, I don't think Fight Pass is doing well in terms of, like, Invicta is great. I love watching Cage Warriors. I like watching some of the grappling. But as it pertains to UFC events, like, how many exclusive Fight Pass events are we getting this year? Like 2 or 3? We had London, I think Singapore. It's not what it was a couple of years ago, right? In my opinion. You're not getting anywhere near 15 events top to bottom these days on Fight Pass.
Certainly not.
So if you're saying for $9.99 you're getting 15 events, plus all those other organizations, plus the library, plus all this other ancillary programming, and to your point, ESPN Plus is less than a month old. You know, like what else is coming there?
Yeah.
The NBA season and things like that. And then I also wanted to mention something that Dave Doyle brought up on Twitter.
You love this deal.
Oh, no, I think it's fascinating because, as you said, I think a lot of people are reacting to it without really knowing the facts. First of all the international fans.
But in fairness to those people, the release was just not good.
Yes.
It was just not good.
But for the international fans, like this should have been made very clear that this is just for the United States audience, right?
Yeah.
You know, what's the difference between something like this and, you know, NBA League Pass or NFL Sunday Ticket or, you know, NHL Center Ice?
Well, you're aligning again with somebody, and like the Athletic, for instance, it's like, you know, you're getting behind a paywall. The paywall is now being introduced to this, but I think that it's brilliant to align with the UFC, where people are just used to doing it through if it's really what you're saying it might be, it doesn't sting at all for any UFC fan. It just benefits everybody.
I guess my point is no sports league is available for free to everyone.
Also, this notion about like, oh, behind another paywall, I get it because I made this point yesterday. You know, you got home yesterday, you wanted to watch game 6, was it? 5, sorry. Yeah, because we're 3-1, that's right. Yeah. Of the 76ers and Celtics, all you had to do is just plop down, turn on your TV, find it on your remote, and you were done. Certainly working with streaming interfaces, which I do, it's a little clunky. It's just, it's not quite there. It's not quite so simple. However, what we need to accept is that media and journalism, all of it, and this is ESPN Plus is not journalism, but it is certainly media. They are all going behind a paywall, all of it. You're going to have to pick and choose how you allot your monthly dollars to pay for it. But this is what I meant about Generation Z. When that generation comes along, the paywall is just a thing that is a part of their understanding. For us, it's a little bit of a new challenge that we're kind of noodling through.
The other thing we have to wonder is, okay, what does this mean for the rest of the events, right? Are they going to go with the
That's
same
my one concern.
12 pay-per-views?
That's my one concern.
If they limit it to 6, as has been, you know, bandied about.
Even 9 would be a substantial improvement.
I think it would be better for the product because you'd be getting better cards on pay-per-view, and it's also asking your fans to pay for less. So I just think that there's a lot still that we don't know, and I agree with all of you. It's maybe best to wait on the grade. But, you know, there was a time not long ago, to a degree maybe we've been spoiled a little bit, but there was a time, you guys remember, where prelims weren't even televised.
True.
Like, you don't have to buy this stuff. Like, you could just wait for the main cards if you want to just
Is that what you're going to point out what Dave Doyle said?
Well, Dave Doyle mentioned that, but he also, I think, was comparing, if memory serves me correct, he was comparing it to, like, in other sports, if you're a perfect example.
Yeah.
You want to watch your Denver Nuggets.
Yeah.
Why would you?
You have to pay for that, right?
young core,
What is that, like $130 a season or something, NBA League Pass?
Slightly more than that, I believe. But yes, I mean, you just basically break it up into 4 payments of something, and then.
So what does that break down to?
I don't know. Like, if it's like $160 or something like that total, so $40 a month for the 4-month period or something like that. So yes, I mean, you make that decision.
It's hard.
Yeah.
I understand that if you want to watch Game 5, like the best of the UFC is available on pay-per-view, and that costs $65, and it's a bummer. But for the most part, you know, if I want to watch the Bills every Sunday, I have to pay for Sunday ticket. It's just the reality of, you know, the era that we live in. It's not all free.
You know, streaming's benefit is that it is simple, right? If YouTube TV, I can get it on my phone, my laptop, and I can just put an app on my TV. It's so great, right? And it's cheaper, and all that's great. But the reality is this idea about when you could, you know, when the heyday of Spike TV, 110 million homes. Look, that is going away fast. It is going away fast. They can't make money like the way they used to. It's just not a reality anymore. And there's this new model coming up, and how exactly it will all end up, I don't know. But this is what I'm talking about. The UFC is eating it a little bit because they're jumping on this new reality a little bit quicker than some of the other leagues, so to speak, in terms of the totality of their product. But it is our future.
Habits are changing. Like, let me ask you guys. I know it might not pertain to you as much, Danny, but there was a time where, you know, I was getting Sports Illustrated every week. I was getting Slam magazine. I was getting a newspaper. I was subscribing to the Wrestling Observer newsletter. Like, there was a time where I was probably paying, you know, $40 or $50 a month on all these publications, right? And I think that over time, especially in the last, you know, 15 to 20 years, as consumers, and I'm in this boat as well. You get spoiled in the sense that a lot is free, right? A lot of it is available. There was a time 30 years ago where none of it was free, right? If you wanted to read the best of the best, you wanted to watch, everything was, you know, behind a paywall, so to speak. And now we've gone used to like hours of podcasts. Like, you know, Howard Stern was murdered when he said that he wanted to go to Sirius, right? Oh, this is the biggest mistake. You're going to charge people. He's doing pretty well for himself,
Yeah,
right?
he's killing it. Are you
So
kidding? Look at his
exactly.
contract.
So I just think people need to start to come to terms with the fact that media entities are starting to realize that if they want to survive and not go, the way of the Denver Post or other newspapers.
Jesus
Rocky
Christ,
Mountain News
man.
before it, man.
But is that not true?
You're
Is that
really
not true?
digging into him.
But that's just the nature.
Why don't you
I think they're starting to smarten up.
That doesn't mean, however, that the UFC can't figure out a way to align this product more in consumer interests. So as you mentioned, do they drop the number of pay-per-views? I think they really need to, both for a quality control issue and as well as, some kind of relief to the fans. I made this point yesterday as well. If you pay for a year the $50 for ESPN Plus, that's less than the cost of a pay-per-view. So you should sort of look at it 15 cards versus one.
Sure.
You got to make a cost evaluation there. But at the same time, really dialing some of that back might be a really nice gesture for them. And it just feels like this deal, we're talking about how great it is for them. Oh, they're going to make money $150 a year annually from ESPN Plus, and we'll see what they get if they stay with Fox or Turner or whoever they end up going with. They'll get money there as well. But are you guys constructing a deal to make sure you have enough money to pay off your debt? Or are you constructing a deal that really services the fan? Because they are two different considerations.
Sure.
They can merge, but that needs to be a component.
At least they're splitting 50-50 with the fighters, 75-75.
You know what's fascinating about that? I mean, look, we have been talking about this topic, and I'm happy you brought that up for years on this show, right?
They do not care, dude.
No, but
they do not care.
We have been talking about it, and we have been wondering what is going to happen when these numbers start to come out, right? But I'm starting to see more people bring it up. I'm starting to see a couple other people's. Of course, it's more of a prevalent topic now as Project Spearhead, Leslie Smith, Cajun Johnson. You're starting to see like 4 more people, right? You're not seeing, the majority of the fighters, but you're starting to, it is amazing. Remember when they signed the Fox deal in 2011? No one brought it up, not a single person. So in that sense, there's a bit of a graduation, there's a bit of an evolution in terms of the thought process. You're starting to see some people say like, wait a second, but I still don't feel like the majority of the fighters are putting 1 and 1 together here.
Back then, the goal was just to get on broadcast TV. The hurdle was that people were just celebrating the feat, and now this extension's only happening and these new deals are only running because it worked the first time, it's successful. So this will make you introspective as to why you're not, especially if you're one of the major players and helping those eyeballs tune in during that time. It would make me introspective as to why I'm not included in that pie a little bit. You know what I mean? And especially when you just look at the other leagues, when you just look at what they're
all in the
doing.
ballpark at 50%.
Yeah, exactly. Like the fluctuation is something
what if they
like 48%.
say, as a result of these deals that we're about to sign, everyone's getting a 1% raise? I think everyone, like, even though it should be way more, I think most fighters would be like, this is great. It doesn't take much to appease the masses, but why should they do it if no one's asking for it? That's the thing. Like, they're not going to listen to us, right?
True.
You seem depressed just thinking about it.
It's just shocking to me. I certainly thought that when these numbers came out, or when this deal was being approached, and that there would be some kind of conversation. And maybe after the fact, because when the...
No, then it's too late.
Well, here's my point. When the sale went through, there was a lot of not talk. And then when it was like, $4 billion, geez, then there was a sort of conversation about it. Maybe we'll get that. I don't know. But I just can't. I mean, here's the funny thing about it. You could say, well, they don't want to mortgage their short-term security for potentially long-term gains that may or may not show up. All right, but you can sign that card from Project Spearhead anonymously, like nobody knows.
Yeah.
And maybe they have enough votes, I don't know. But I cannot believe they think that leaving, and I think the notion that they would get 50% is a little overstated, but like 25% of that.
Yeah, you got to start somewhere.
Anything, really.
Even
1%.
Even 1/5 of that would be $150 million. Y'all split, and y'all won't do nothing about it.
And it's prize fighting.
Yeah.
It's like the whole point is to make money. It's a materialistic pursuit. It is up front with what it is, and for them to ignore that piece of it is astounding.
This is very inside baseball, but I know you guys look at these things. Maybe the casual fan doesn't. When ESPN is in business with a sports entity, they tend to give it more coverage, right? And that's the other benefit here,
100%.
right? This was something
Especially
that
if they're
with the NHL.
UFC on ESPN Plus Fight Night. Worst name ever. Worst name
That's
ever.
gonna be a mouthful. It's gonna be funny.
But you know what I mean? Like when NHL left to go to NBC,
Yes.
less Sports Center coverage. So this is another reason why I think Dana White has always
Yeah, they even
wanted
took them
this.
off, like on ESPN's website. They even took them off the main. You know how they have the NBA? They took them off the main. Now you have to go into more sports, I think, to find the NHL.
Other.
Yeah, other.
Wow.
So that's the first shoe. We'll see where the next shoe falls and if there's a third shoe. Yeah. But again, just to reiterate to the fans, this is for the United States only. You know, the BT Sport deal, the Combate deal, all these other deals, they don't really necessarily pertain, just like they don't pertain to us, right? The BT Sport deal. In Europe, they don't have to pay for pay-per-views. How lucky are they? Of course, they're happening at like 4 a.m., which kind of sucks. I'd rather pay for them and watch them at a normal time. But again, it's all different. So I wish that was made a little clearer because I think a lot of fans were confused, probably looking for ESPN Plus overseas and realizing that they can't get it and freaking out. Yeah. So we'll see how it plays out and where the other, the other deals are struck. Now, before we go, we must mention that there's a very, very, very busy schedule happening on Saturday. Now, this is one of those times where Bellator and the UFC are going head-to-head. Bellator 199 from San Jose, UFC 224 from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, Amanda Nunes versus Pennington, and, of course, the last fight of the first round of the tournament, King Mo versus Ryan Bader. Better main card.
Ooh. Oh, UFC.
It's got to be the UFC.
Yeah, it has to be UFC.
I'm saying. No? Yeah?
Right?
Easy?
Yeah, it has to be the UFC.
Best fight.
Ooh.
Maybe the Lineker fight. I like that one.
As far as excitement, yeah.
Against a future MMA Beat panelist?
Yeah. Well, besides the conflict of interest there, what he did to Henry Morale was a good eye opener. I look forward to see what he could do. I mean, obviously he could put together suddenly a 2-fight streak that would be pretty amazing if he's able to do that again to Lineker. But Lineker has been so good. I mean, he's some missed weight and the Dillashaw fight away from being maybe considered one of the top guys in the fight game right now. I mean, he's been that good, I mean, there's some intrigue to that one. I like that fight.
I like that fight a lot. I'm going to go with the Kelvin Gastelum Jacare fight because, I was working on the Bellator predictions and UFC predictions for this weekend. And out of all those fights, that's the one fight that I'm just like, I just don't know how it's going to go. Like, I can kind of guess how it might look, but I just don't know who's going to win. I think it's probably the most competitive fight of that weekend.
That's my pick as well.
Really? Mm-hmm. Wow.
What about...
Well, we agree on something.
Yeah.
What about Paul Daly and Fitch?
That's my pick.
Yeah?
Really?
Well, I don't know if it's my pick, but I just love the story.
Remember when Daly gets thrown out of the UFC for taking a swipe at Josh Koscheck, who's Fitch's old partner, man. I mean, this is backstory is so good. You just got to peel it back, bro.
To me, there's nothing better than the disgruntled employee going in there against, I'm not going to say shiny new toy because John Fitch isn't exactly, a new toy, so to speak. But, he's a San Jose guy, AKA guy. And Daly just like not caring about his place in the company anymore. It's such a strange feeling.
He's like their Mark Hunt or something.
But it's strange because like he was one of the first guys that Coker signed when he went back to Bellator. And they have the history from the Strikeforce days. It's a very bizarre feud to me. But those things are fun. Like, what if he wins? By the way, I think it's a really tough matchup for Fitch. Excuse me, for Daly. They're not doing him any favors. But what if he wins and he gets on the mic and he drops the Stone Cold Steve Austin promo? That's fun stuff.
Yeah.
No?
Got to look at it as one big mega card like we did the last time these guys had two good cards. Because it starts at 9, right? Versus 10?
10.
Yeah.
So you could watch, you could pretty much overlap on those things and kind of watch this big
Do you like this?
I mean, I'd always rather they not go head-to-head, especially when Bellator does have a nice product. Because, I mean, you got Aaron Pico's on the card, right? So it's like there's some good intrigue that you'd like to tune in. You don't want to have to like flip back and forth for these things. But ultimately, I'd rather they split them up. But I don't really have a big problem with it ultimately because, I mean, as long as you got a back button on your remote, I can switch back and forth.
I think if you're a fan, it's fun. I think if you're trying to cover both and like watch them both at the same time and you only have one TV, it's tough.
The only thing is that there is a difference between watching something recorded and watching something live. Like you're going to be on Twitter, you're going to see some stuff. So and you're going to have to pick unless you got 2 screens going on, and even then you have to be taking your attention to either screen. So I'd rather have them different nights. But
I'll just say that neither card's all that great. So watching them side by side.
Damn, really? I kind of like both of them.
Oh, you can make even a better card.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like
you have 2 TVs, or you have a computer screen?
I have 2 computer screens. Yeah, I'll put them up on both.
Okay.
Yep.
Got the old dinosaur.
Yeah.
The young dinosaur or the old lion or whatever. He's
fighting.
fighting.
You got his not his retirement fight, but his last fight.
Yes, his last fight.
The USADA promoted Vitor Belfort.
What a bizarre. We're not gonna have time to talk about that.
I literally laughed out loud.
What is that? You get a free T-shirt?
Oh yeah.
25X, bro.
What is that?
You don't know about 25X.
Hashtag.
I mean, what North Korean bull-ass thing?
It gets better. You also get a shout out on their Twitter account, which has 70 followers, and you're one of them.
Is that really?
Yeah.
Is that really what they wrote?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
You'll get a shout out on the
That
Twitter
is
account.
huge. Is it a verified account?
No.
No.
Ever seen that Simpsons episode where they got like some crazy or some stupid like dog to like as a mascot to get kids to not smoke? And he was like the most uncool dog ever. That's USADA.
I hope Eddie Alvarez got paid a lot of money for that video. By the way, great tweet from Dustin Poirier with the 25X. Did you guys see that?
Oh, yeah. It's like how many times you did sign the contract? Well, hey, they signed it now, so who cares?
Also, another, I think, interesting storyline for Saturday night, Mackenzie Dern.
Yep.
Yeah.
Quick turnaround, a little bit of a step up, maybe an opponent. Left her team recently.
I would actually say it's a big step up.
Okay, big step up. Left her team recently.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, it was invited to leave.
Yeah, that was weird wording, but
Did you not think that was a bigger story than it was made out to be?
it should be a bigger story?
Well, the
or
thing is, I don't
turn
know.
into a
I don't
bigger
know.
story?
No, I don't think it did turn into a big story. And there's two ways to look at it. One is that, well, these are sort of routine things, and gyms go through turnover and whatever. And the other one was, she was like, I don't really know why I left. They invited me to leave. Have you ever
I've had
heard
jobs like that?
No.
Yeah.
Well,
I think that was
no.
her
She did
just
say
kinda
she
taking
did say that they were asking her to come in and train more, but she likes to sort of
Right. So you
take it easy.
You tie that to the fact that there's been a real lack of development in her wrestling.
Yeah.
I'm not saying there's anything because I don't know there's anything, but I do wonder if there might be.
Oh, yeah. And that's a phenomenal team, right? Like, you have John Crouch.
When was the last time you
corner,
heard somebody
Benson
being
Henderson.
invited to leave the MMA lab? I've never heard that in my life.
Yeah. But what does that even mean, invited to leave?
You get an invitation on the
Yeah.
We're at,
I get those at
leave.
restaurants all the time. So we're inviting you to get the fuck out.
RSVP ASAP. Yeah, that is interesting. Also, Lomachenko fighting again.
Yes, Jorge Linares.
Yes, that is a great fight. So
On ESPN.
how you have 3 screens?
I can put up a third one. TV screens like Paul Wall and Chameleonaire falling out the sky like rain.
Wow.
What do you know about
I
that?
don't know what you're talking
When the
about.
caps start.
Friday.
Okay.
Friday.
Good luck on that. You
No
got lucky
conflict
there.
there. Okay, so it has been a fun day. We still have a little more show left. If you're watching us on Twitter, stay right there. If you're watching us on YouTube, MMA Fighting, Facebook, any other illegal streaming device, live.twitter.com/MMA Fighting is where you need to go. You know the place. Same home as always. We'll be answering your questions for the next 30 minutes. You have sent us a litany of questions. We have picked the best ones. The winners, by the way, the ones that we selected, all get nothing. Just want to let you know. Just the glory of being mentioned on this show. So, live.twitter.com/MMA Fighting after the beat starts right now.